There comes a moment in every human journey when the unconscious rises like a tide, carrying with it truths we once avoided, patterns we once denied, and strengths we never knew we possessed. It is a moment both unsettling and liberating. A moment that signals the beginning of the most powerful phase of your life, and whether you realize it or not. This transformation announces itself through signs subtle at first, then undeniable. 1. You begin to sense a quiet distance from who you used to be. It isn't sadness, it isn't confusion, it is the dawning awareness that the person you were was only a mask, a temporary form. Something deeper is now standing behind it, ready to emerge. 2. Old desires lose their grip on you. The things that once impressed you, status, approval, noise, no longer hold the same value. Your motivations shift from surface to depth. 3. You feel an urgency to confront your own shadows, not to escape them, not to deny them, but to witness them, because you sense instinctively that your hidden strengths are buried within these very shadows. 4. You can no longer tolerate self-betrayal. Even the smallest compromise of your truth feels wrong. Your inner voice becomes louder than external expectations. 5. Your solitude becomes sacred. What once felt like loneliness now feels like clarity. You begin to seek time alone, not to escape life, but to understand it. 6. You detach from chaotic people naturally, without guilt, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Your energy no longer resonates with those who drain, deceive, or distract. 7. You begin recognizing recurring patterns in your life. Patterns in relationships, choices, emotion. But instead of frustration, you now feel curiosity. You want to know what these patterns are trying to teach you. 8. You feel a pull toward your authentic path, even if it terrifies you. Fear no longer stops you, it signals direction. Every step that makes your heart race somehow feels more honest than a lifetime of safety. 9. You experience moments of profound clarity that feel almost like inner revelations. Thoughts come with depth. Intuition sharpens. You begin to understand the hidden architecture of your experiences. 10. You are no longer impressed by perfection. Instead, you value sincerity, vulnerability, and realness both in others and in yourself. 11. You forgive more easily, but you also forget less. Forgiveness becomes a release of burden, not an invitation for repeated pain. You learn the difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. 12. You feel your boundaries strengthening, not through force, but through self-respect. You stop trying to be everything for everyone. 13. You sense a calling that you can no longer ignore. It may not yet have a name, but its presence is undeniable. It whispers through your interests, your dreams, your longings. 14. You start valuing inner wealth over outer noise. Wisdom, character, purpose, these become more meaningful than applause, comparison, or validation. 15. You become aware of the symbolic meaning behind your struggles. Every challenge feels like a message. Every loss becomes a doorway. You begin to understand that life speaks in symbols, not accidents. 16. You reclaim the parts of yourself you once suppressed. Your creativity, your ambition, your courage, your voice. You bring back everything that life or fear convinced you to hide. 17. You trust the process even when you cannot see the outcome. Something inside you begins to believe that everything unfolding is shaping you into someone you were always meant to become. 18. And finally, you feel yourself transforming from the inside out. Not in sudden bursts, but in steady awakening. You are no longer driven by who you were, but by who you are becoming. This is the threshold of your most powerful phase. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become more whole, more conscious, more aligned with the depth of your own being. When these signs appear, know that you are not breaking down, you are breaking open. And what rises from the opening is the strength you were born to claim. The most powerful phase of your life begins the moment you sense a quiet separation between who you have been and who you are becoming, a shift so subtle, yet so unmistakable that it does not need announcement or validation. It appears as an inner movement, a stirring beneath the surface of your daily routines, reminding you that the identity you once clung to has grown too small for the depth you now feel rising inside you. You begin to realize that many of the roles you played were created from expectation rather than truth. And as this awareness grows, the old layers start falling away without dramatic conflict. There is simply less interest in maintaining an image, less energy invested in keeping up with narratives that no longer reflect your inner reality. Instead, a deeper, more authentic version of you begins to whisper from within, urging you to acknowledge the parts of yourself you once ignored, avoided, or underestimated. This shift does not come with fanfare. It comes with quiet clarity, and it is in this clarity that your most powerful phase germinates. You start noticing patterns that were always there, but hidden behind the noise of daily survival. Patterns in your reactions, your choices, your relationships. These patterns act as mirrors, showing you where you have abandoned yourself, where you have given too much, where you have withheld your voice, where you have repeated cycles out of familiarity rather than intention. As these insights surface, you no longer feel the urge to blame others for the shape of your journey. Instead, you begin to see that every recurring experience carries a message designed to strengthen you, refine you, and draw out the dormant qualities within you that were waiting for acknowledgement. This is the moment you stop living on autopilot and start participating in your own evolution. As you detach from outdated versions of yourself, you naturally detach from old desires as well. What once seemed important begins to fade, not because you have become disinterested in life, but because your values are shifting from the surface to the depths. You stop seeking recognition in the eyes of others and begin searching for alignment within yourself. You no longer chase validation because you start recognizing your own worth without external reflection. This creates a profound internal freedom, a sense that you are finally moving towards something that belongs to you rather than something you were conditioned to want. With this freedom comes the courage to release relationships, environment, and ambitions that once defined you but no longer support your becoming. The release may feel unfamiliar at first, but it brings a lightness that confirms you are traveling in the right direction. This stage of your journey awakens the need to face your inner shadows, not with fear but with readiness. You begin to understand that your shadows are not enemies to be conquered, but parts of yourself waiting to be integrated. Every insecurity, every doubt, every suppressed emotion carries a story about your past and a clue about your potential. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you lean into it, realizing that your greatest strength lies behind the very walls you spent years building. You uncover forgotten memories, unspoken truths, unresolved wounds, and instead of drowning in them, you allow them to guide you towards self-awareness. This confrontation becomes a rite of passage, signaling that you are no longer seeking power outside yourself, but cultivating it within. As your inner world transforms, your relationship with solitude changes as well. Solitude no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes a sanctuary where your thoughts settle and your intuition sharpens. You find yourself craving quiet moments, not as an escape from others, but as a journey into yourself. In this silence, you hear the voice that was always there but buried beneath distractions. You begin to trust it, follow it, and protect it. This inner companionship grows stronger than the need for constant connection or noise. Over time, solitude becomes a source of strength, a space where your clarity expands and your authenticity takes root. You stop fearing the absence of others because you realize you are no longer absent from yourself. As your identity reshapes, your boundaries strengthen almost effortlessly. You no longer tolerate chaos, disrespect, or inconsistency, not because you judge others, but because you finally understand the cost of abandoning your own peace. You stop negotiating with your intuition or explaining your worth. Your energy becomes discerning, your presence intentional. You withdraw from environments where you must shrink and gravitate towards spaces that allow you to breathe fully. This shift is not driven by ego but by self-respect, and it marks one of the most powerful signs of your transformation. You begin to value quality over quantity, depth over convenience, authenticity over attachment. Your circles become smaller but more aligned, your conversations fewer but richer, your commitments clearer and more purpose-driven. With each internal shift, your intuition becomes louder, more precise. You begin to feel the difference between what drains you and what awakens you. You sense when something is right for you before you can rationalize it. A subtle inner knowing guides you away from paths that once tempted you and toward paths that challenge you to grow. This intuitive clarity becomes your compass, allowing you to navigate life with a confidence rooted not in control, but in trust. Trust in your timing, trust in your unfolding, trust in the quiet intelligence that lives within you. You no longer fear uncertainty because you recognize that uncertainty is not chaos, it is the space where new possibilities are born. As these signs accumulate, you realize you are not simply changing, you are emerging. You are shedding the identities that once protected you but now limit you. You are stepping into a phase of life where you act not from woundedness but from awareness, not from fear but from alignment. You begin to sense the vastness of your potential, the depth of your inner strength, the clarity of your purpose, even if you cannot yet name it. The shift is internal, but its impact radiates externally. You feel more grounded, more intentional, more connected to yourself than ever before. And the world feels different because you are different. This is the entry point into the most powerful phase of your life. A threshold you cross not through force, but through awakening. True transformation begins when you find yourself no longer afraid to stand alone with your own thoughts, when your inner and outer worlds quietly shift in a way that makes you more present, more aware, and more honest with yourself than ever before. It doesn't arrive through grand declarations or dramatic upheavals, but through a subtle change in the way you perceive your own inner life. You start noticing the parts of yourself that you spent years ignoring, and instead of turning away from them, you lean in. The silence inside you becomes sharper, cleaner, less cluttered by old fears or distractions. In that silence, you discover clarity, raw, unfiltered, and sometimes unsettling, yet you know it is necessary. You can feel that a deeper version of you is being formed beneath the surface, shaped by the lessons you once resisted and the truths you now finally acknowledge. This stage of your life calls you to confront the shadows you once avoided. These shadows are not external enemies, but pieces of you that were pushed aside because they were uncomfortable or misunderstood. You feel an urge to sit with your insecurity rather than hide from it, to explore your anger rather than suppress it, to understand your wounds instead of pretending they never existed. In doing so, you begin reclaiming parts of yourself that were scattered throughout your past. Each realization, each uncomfortable truth, brings you closer to an integrated sense of self. You begin to understand that your strength does not come from perfection or control, but from awareness. When you can look at your darkness without flinching, without judgment, you gain a kind of inner power that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. As you face these shadows, your boundaries transform naturally. You no longer feel compelled to tolerate behavior that drains you or diminishes your spirit. You stop giving explanations for choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and authenticity over approval. You simply know what aligns with you and what does not. This knowing shapes your actions, your choices, your relationships. You distance yourself quietly from what hinders your growth. You begin to speak less but mean more. Your presence becomes intentional rather than habitual. You are no longer guided by the need to be accepted, but by the desire to remain true to yourself. This is the point where your inner evolution becomes visible to the outer world, even if you never say a word about its solitude. Once something you may have avoided becomes a sanctuary. You no longer seek noise to distract you from yourself. Instead, you welcome time alone, because it is in that space that you can hear your intuition without interference. Solitude becomes a mirror reflecting your truth back to you. You start enjoying long moments of quiet where your thoughts can breathe and your emotions can settle. In these moments, you discover that loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of yourself. And in this presence, you begin to rebuild a relationship with your inner world. You understand your strengths, your desires, your fears with greater clarity. You honor them instead of burying them. You feel the boundaries of your inner landscape expanding, make room for new possibilities, new insights, new awareness. With this deepening inner connection, your intuition sharpens. It becomes a steady pulse beneath your everyday decisions, guiding you toward what resonates and away from what disrupts your balance. You notice subtle signals in people, in environments and conversation. You sense when something is meant for you and when it is not, even before logic enters the picture. This intuitive clarity empowers you to make decisions that previously felt too risky or uncertain. You no longer need someone else to confirm your direction because you have learned to trust the compass within. It isn't loud or dramatic, it is steady enough to cut through confusion, steady enough to guide you toward your becoming. You find yourself hesitating less, choosing faster, living more boldly because you are no longer battling against your own inner voice. This phase of your life restructures your relationships as well. You no longer cling to connections that drain your energy. You no longer accept the weight of other people's expectations as your responsibility. Instead, you seek alignment over attachment, sincerity over convenience. You become more aware of the emotional tone around you, and you protect your energy with a quiet strength that feels natural rather than forced. You allow people to exit without resisting, and you welcome new connections without rushing. This balance comes from understanding that not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next chapter. Some were meant to teach you, some to awaken you, some to challenge you, and some to free you. By accepting this, you release the guilt that once held you hostage to relationships that had already expired. You walk forward carrying only what contributes to your inner expansion. Your self-respect rises. It rises silently, firmly, insistently. It influences how you speak to yourself, how you allow others to treat you, how you navigate opportunities and decisions. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop bending to avoid conflict. You stop pretending to be less than who you are. Instead, you stand in the truth of your experience without apologizing for it. This is not defiance, it is alignment. When you respect yourself, you stop participating in situations that diminish your inner clarity. You stop abandoning your own needs. You stop fearing the consequences of honoring your truth. The more you respect yourself, the more life begins to reflect that respect back to you in ways you did not expect. As you grow through this internal transformation, you discover resilience you did not know you possessed. You become less reactive and more observant, less impulsive and more intentional. You begin to understand that your power was never about winning, or proving, or controlling. It was always about knowing yourself deeply enough to act from awareness rather than fear. You move through challenges with a steadiness that surprises even you. You understand that discomfort is not a threat, but an initiation. You understand that change is not chaos, but evolution. You understand that loss is not punishment, but redirection. Every experience begins to feel meaningful, even if it is difficult, because you sense that something larger is shaping your path. Through each moment in this state, you reconnect with your inner purpose, even if you do not yet have words for it. You feel a pull toward a deeper, more authentic direction in your life. This pull is subtle but persistent. It arises in your interests, in your instincts, in your quietest thoughts. It feels like a memory of who you were always meant to become. You cannot explain it to others, and you do not need to. You simply feel it, and it guides you forward with an inner certainty that becomes stronger each day. Through this alignment, you enter a phase of life marked not by external achievement but by internal power, a power that grows from clarity, boundaries, shadow integration, solitude, and self-respect. This is the essence of your transformation, the sign that you are stepping into a version of yourself that you were always destined to meet. Power begins to rise within you the moment you stop living according to the expectations that once shaped your identity. You begin to make choices from a place of inner alignment rather than external pressure. And this shift transforms the entire architecture of your life. It happens quietly, without dramatic declarations, without the need for validation. You simply feel yourself moving away from what once drained your spirit and toward what feels authentic, grounded, and true. You start to value the inner voice you once ignored, and you notice how it guides you with increasing clarity. This is the beginning of a deeper strength, a strength that grows not from control but from connection to your own intuition. You no longer force yourself into roles that suffocate your growth, nor do you cling to paths that require the sacrifice of your peace. Instead, you choose what resonates with your deeper purpose, even if it is unfamiliar or uncertain. As you walk this path, you realize that your energy is no longer available for situations that feel misaligned. You begin withdrawing from conversations that feel empty, environments that feel heavy, and relationships that leave you depleted. You do so without anger or resentment. It is simply a response to your own rising awareness. You sense immediately when something is wrong for you, and this sensitivity becomes a powerful compass. You no longer compromise your intuition to maintain harmony with others. You no longer silence yourself to avoid discomfort. You no longer pretend to be unaffected by things that drain you. Your emotional honesty becomes sharper, clearer, almost instinctual. You can feel when someone's presence disrupts your inner balance, and you respond by protecting your peace rather than sacrificing it. This transformation also brings a new understanding of boundaries. You begin setting them not to shut people out, but to ensure that your inner world remains intact. You stop explaining or justifying your decisions, because you recognize that your boundaries are expressions of self-respect, not invitations for debate. You speak less about what you will no longer tolerate, and simply walk away from situations that require you to betray yourself. You allow yourself to disappoint others rather than continue disappointing yourself. This shift in priorities creates a quiet confidence within you, a knowing that you no longer need approval to exist fully. The more you honor your boundaries, the stronger your sense of identity becomes. You begin to see that your power lies not in being available to everyone, but in being aligned with yourself. With this alignment, your intuition becomes vivid, almost luminous. You start to notice subtleties in people's actions, motives, and energy. You sense when someone's words do not match their intentions. You sense when an opportunity is meant for you, or when it is merely a distraction. You sense when the chapter has ended, even before life forces you to let go. This intuitive clarity feels like an inner light guiding you through uncertainty, helping you make decisions with a confidence that surprises even you. It is not loud or dramatic. It is steady and unmistakable. You learn to trust the signals your body gives you, the tightening in your chest, the heaviness in your gut, the calmness in your breath. These signals become your language for navigating the world. As your intuition strengthens, so does your authenticity. You begin expressing yourself without fear of judgment. You speak your truth, even when your voice trembles. You choose honesty over comfort, clarity over avoidance. You start showing parts of yourself that you once hid, the vulnerable parts, the passionate parts, the ambitious parts, the parts that crave meaning and depth. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because you understand that not everyone is meant to comprehend your evolution. You value sincerity in others and in yourself. You crave conversations that reveal something real and reject interactions that feel superficial. This authenticity restructures your life in ways you did not expect. It draws people toward you who resonate with your truth and distances you from those who never aligned with it. The release of old desires deepens this transformation. You no longer chase recognition or external markers of success. You no longer need applause to confirm your value. Instead, you move toward what feels purposeful. This shift changes your relationship with ambition. You are still driven, but you are no longer driven by fear or comparison. You are driven by alignment. You pursue goals that reflect your inner calling, not those that impress others. This quiet alignment creates a resilience within you that cannot be shaken by failure or uncertainty. You start valuing the process more than the outcome. You begin choosing paths that challenge you in meaningful ways rather than those that offer temporary gratification. Your motivation becomes rooted in purpose, not ego, and this makes your actions more powerful, more intentional, more enduring. This phase also brings a profound detachment from chaotic people. You no longer engage with individuals who feed on conflict, drama, or emotional inconsistency. You stop rescuing people who have no intention of rescuing themselves. You stop giving advice to those who only seek attention. You stop trying to heal wounds in others that they refuse to acknowledge. Instead, you learn to observe without absorbing, to care without carrying. You allow others to experience the consequences of their own choices, freeing yourself from the burden of fixing what was never yours to fix. This detachment is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is the understanding that your emotional energy is sacred and must be protected. As your alignment deepens, you become more aware of your own potential. You start recognizing talents, insights, and strengths that were always within you but dormant beneath old habits and fears. You feel visions, rising ideas, dreams, possibilities that once seemed too distant or unrealistic. Now they feel attainable, not because the path is clear, but because you have become someone who trusts the journey. You begin taking bold steps toward your aspirations even when you do not know the outcome. This courage comes from the grounding you've built within yourself. You move with intention, not haste. You grow with purpose, not pressure. You expand with clarity, not chaos. Through all of this, you start to understand that true power is not loud or forceful. It does not come from domination, external validation, or control. True power is quiet, steady, rooted in self-awareness. It is the ability to walk away from what harms you, to move toward what aligns with you, and to trust the unfolding path even when the destination is unseen. It is the ability to stand in your truth without seeking permission, to act from authenticity rather than fear, and to let your inner voice guide you through every decision. This is the essence of entering your strongest era, not through force, but through alignment with the deepest parts of who you are becoming. You enter your strongest era the moment you begin reclaiming the pieces of yourself you once abandoned, the qualities you hid to survive, the dreams you silenced to fit into the expectations placed upon you. This reclamation does not happen in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, like light returning to a room you forgot had windows. You start feeling the presence of parts of you that were buried beneath years of fear, conditioning, and self-doubt. They rise quietly, almost shyly at first, as if unsure whether they are allowed to exist again. But the more you listen, the stronger they become. This is the beginning of your inner expansion, the unfolding of a self that was always there but never fully acknowledged. You start recognizing your own voice in a way you never have before. It feels like a familiar sound returning after a long silence, a truth you once knew but somehow lost sight of. This voice speaks in intuition, memories, impulses, and subtle sensation. It tells you when something is right for you and when something is wrong. It guides you toward choices that nourish your spirit and away from those that shrink your potential. And for the first time, you begin trusting this voice more than the noise around you. You learn that your own guidance is not only valid, it is essential. This trust becomes a turning point, a quiet revolution within you. As this inner trust grows, you begin walking away from everything that contradicts your deeper truth. You release relationships that keep you small, habits that numb your potential, environments that suffocate your growth. The process is not bitter, it is necessary. You realize that holding on to what no longer aligns with your becoming is the same as holding yourself back. So you let go, not with anger, but with clarity. You understand that some chapters are meant to end once they have fulfilled their purpose. Through this release, space opens within you, space for new experiences, new connection, new opportunities that resonate with the person you are becoming. The emptiness that follows is not loss, it is preparation. You begin feeling a pull toward a direction you cannot yet define. This pull is not loud, it is steady, persistent, almost magnetic. It draws you toward a version of yourself that feels more expansive, more conscious, more alive. It shows up in your sudden curiosity about certain ideas, your renewed desire to create, your urge to explore paths you once dismissed. You feel as if you are being quietly guided toward a destiny that has been waiting for you to mature enough to recognize it. This sense of calling shapes your decisions in ways you cannot fully articulate. You simply know when something belongs to your unfolding path and when it does not. With this emerging direction, your relationship with fear transforms. Fear becomes less of an enemy and more of a signal. Instead of paralyzing you, it points you toward what matters. You realize that the things that scare you most often reflect the areas where your greatest growth is waiting. You stop running from fear and begin walking toward it, not recklessly but courageously. Each time you confront it, you discover an ability, a strength, or an insight you did not know you possessed. Fear becomes a doorway rather than a barrier, an invitation rather than an obstacle. As you evolve, your inner landscape begins to change. You feel moments of clarity that arrive without warning, moments where everything seems connected in a way that transcends logic. You understand your past more deeply. You see how certain experiences shaped you, how certain losses redirected you, how certain challenges refined your character. These insights help you forgive yourself for the choices you made when you didn't know better. You release the weight of regret, the heaviness of old shame, the burden of carrying identities that were never truly yours. This emotional release frees energy within you that was once trapped in the stories you told yourself about who you were supposed to be. You become more grounded, more rooted in your own present. You stop reacting to everything around you. Instead, you observe, reflect, and respond with intention. This calmness is not passivity, it is awareness. It is the recognition that your peace is too valuable to be surrendered to external chaos. You protect your inner stillness with a new level of seriousness, understanding that it is the foundation upon which your power rests. This inner grounding influences how you move through the world. Your steps become deliberate, your choices become clearer, your energy becomes more focused. People begin to sense this shift. Even if you never speak about it, you start embracing your creativity in a fuller way. This creativity may not look like art, it may look like problem solving, imagination, innovation, new ideas, bold decisions, or visions for your future. You begin realizing that creativity is simply the expression of your soul's desire to shape your reality. You no longer censor your ideas out of fear of judgment. You allow yourself to explore, experiment, and express what feels meaningful. This expression becomes a channel through which your deeper self communicates. You realize that creativity is not a luxury, it is a doorway into deeper understanding of your own potential. You also develop a new relationship with time. You stop rushing. You stop forcing things to happen before their moment. You begin recognizing that growth has its own rhythm, and that your life unfolds exactly as it needs to when you are aligned with your truth. This patience is not resignation, it is trust. Trust that you are moving in the right direction, even when you cannot see the entire path. Trust that clarity will arrive when the time is right. Trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by. This trust becomes a quiet power, one that allows you to move through uncertainty without losing your center. You begin noticing that you are becoming more conscious of your patterns, your emotions, your motivations, your reactions. You see yourself with greater honesty, and this honesty becomes liberating. You understand the origins of your fears, the roots of your habits, the triggers that once controlled you. This self-awareness gives you the power to choose differently, to act from intention rather than from old wounds or unconscious impulses. With each conscious choice, you break cycles that have followed you for years. With each act of awareness, you build a future that reflects your true self rather than your conditioned self. You feel yourself expanding emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You begin to sense your own potential not as an abstract idea, but as a living force within you. You realize that the strongest version of yourself was never about becoming someone else. It was about returning to the person you were always meant to be, the person you lost beneath layers of fear, conditioning, and compromise. This realization marks your entry into the most powerful phase of your life, a phase defined by authenticity, clarity, trust, and the integration of your whole self into the present moment.